In the heart of America, a war is being waged, not with soldiers or bullets, but with ink and paper, with lines on a map, lines that will define the political landscape for a decade, lines that will determine who holds power, and lines that are forcing us all to ask a fundamental question. In a democracy, do the people choose their representatives, or are we entering an age where politicians simply choose their voters? Welcome. What is happening in Texas right now is more than just a local political squabble. It's a political firestorm with the power to reshape the entire U.S. Congress. At the center of it all is a process called redistricting, the redrawing of electoral maps that happens once a decade to reflect population changes from the census. It's supposed to be routine, but what's happening in Texas is anything but. This is a rare mid-decade redistricting, a highly unusual and aggressive maneuver. The Republican-led Texas legislature, with reported influence from President Donald Trump's team, is ramming through a new congressional map. Their goal is explicit: to engineer up to 5 new, solidly Republican U.S. House seats ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. This isn't a minor tweak. It's a strategic redrawing of the battlefield designed to fortify the GOP's razor-thin majority in the U.S. House. The proposed map would take the number of districts that Trump won in 2024 and juice them, cranking the number up to 30 and ensuring each one is a Republican stronghold by at least 10 points. So why now? Why the rush for a mid-decade redraw? Publicly, Republican leadership offers a few key reasons. They claim the U.S. Census Bureau dramatically undercounted the state's population, robbing Texas of fair representation. They also point to a seismic shift in voting patterns, particularly among Hispanic voters in South Texas, who they argue are abandoning the Democratic Party in droves. With millions of new residents pouring in, many from blue states like California and New York, the GOP argument is that these new lines are essential to reflect the current will of the people. But Democrats and voting rights advocates are crying foul. They call this a cynical and desperate act of partisan gerrymandering. They argue this isn't about fair representation at all, but about rushing through a rigged map before the courts or the voters can stop them in 2026. The timing, they say, is particularly telling, as the legislature is ignoring far more urgent issues to focus on consolidating its own power. The Republican push triggered one of the most dramatic political protests in recent memory. To stop the vote, over 50 Texas House Democrats did the only thing they could. They broke quorum. They fled the state. By leaving, they denied the House the 100 members legally required to conduct business. They flew to Washington, D.C., Illinois, and beyond, becoming political fugitives in their own state to block what they called a direct attack on democracy. This act of defiance brought the legislative process to a grinding halt. Fox News correspondent Garrett Tenney said,
ordered those Democrats, they have to have permission slips to leave the State House, and they have state troopers watching over them until today's session is over. A group of Democrats protested that order on Monday. One Texas Democrat decided she'd rather sleep on the State House floor than be escorted by police. It was that bad for her. Last night, 6 more Democratic lawmakers joined her.
The walkout successfully killed the first special session. For Democrats, the stakes were immense. They argued the map was designed to intentionally dilute the voting power of Black and Hispanic Texans, the very groups driving the state's population boom. Their protest was also a statement of priorities. They pointed to the devastating floods in the Texas Hill Country in July 2025, a catastrophe that killed over 135 people. They argued that flood relief, not a partisan power grab, should have been the legislature's first and only priority. Nicole Collier said,
Texas had a 100% discrimination rate when it comes to redistricting. This is probably, from the experts that we talked to, the worst racial discrimination redistricting since Jim Crow era.
The Republican response was swift and severe. Governor Abbott and House Speaker Dustin Burrows issued civil arrest warrants and threatened absent lawmakers with $500 daily fines. When the Democrats finally returned to Austin on August 18th, the atmosphere was toxic. The doors to the House chamber were physically locked to prevent anyone else from leaving again, and some returning Democrats were even assigned state police escorts. less for their protection and more to ensure they couldn't leave again. With the Democrats forced back, the end game began. On August 20th, after hours of grueling debate, the Texas House passed the map, House Bill 4, on a party line vote of 88 to 52. During the session, Democrats desperately tried to change the bill, proposing 12 different amendments. They asked for delays to address flood relief, for independent reviews, for a new study on the voting age population. Every single amendment was systematically voted down by the Republican majority. The debate revealed a fundamental and perhaps irreconcilable chasm in how the two parties view the law and democracy itself. Republicans, led by Representative Todd Hunter, the bill's author, were shockingly candid. They argued that this was simply partisan politics and that the Supreme Court gave them the green light. They repeatedly invoked the 2019 case Rucho versus Common Cause, where the court ruled that federal courts can't intervene in partisan gerrymandering claims. Essentially, their argument was it might be hyper-partisan, but it's not illegal. It's just politics. Democrats fired back, accusing them of cloaking illegal racial gerrymandering in the language of partisanship. They detailed how the map used surgical precision to crack communities of color, splitting their neighborhoods across multiple districts to dilute their vote and pack them into a few districts to waste their vote. They reminded the chamber that Texas has a uniquely ugly history here. Its maps have been struck down by the courts for racial discrimination in every single decade since the Voting Rights Act was passed. A recent court ruling, Petaway versus Galveston County, has further muddied the waters, making it harder for minority groups to band together to challenge maps, a legal shift Republicans are now exploiting to its fullest extent.
This is where the fight gets down to the numbers. Republicans claim their map actually increases minority representation. They point out that 4 of the 5 new districts are majority Hispanic, and that they've created 2 majority Black districts where none existed before. But Democrats say that's a smokescreen. They argue the map destroys existing coalition districts, where Black and Hispanic voters previously joined forces to elect their chosen candidates. For example, Houston's Congressional District 29 sees its Hispanic voting population plummet from a commanding 64% to just 42%. A court-ordered Minority Opportunity District, CD 35 in Austin, is effectively dismantled. The result? Despite Latinos making up over 40% of Texas's population, this map gives them an opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice in only about 10% of districts. The projected impact on Black representation is even more devastating, a potential 50% reduction from 4 districts down to 2. Beyond the statistics, this is about people and communities. The map is filled with absurdly shaped districts. It links the urban, progressive core of Austin with the remote coastal town of Port Aransas. It carves up historically connected Black neighborhoods in Houston and attaches them to rural, conservative Liberty County. These are communities with nothing in common, now lumped together under a single representative who can't possibly serve their conflicting interests. And what's happening in Texas isn't staying in Texas. It has officially triggered a national redistricting war. In direct response, California's legislature is fast-tracking a retaliatory map designed to flip 5 Republican seats. Democratic governors in New York and Maryland are considering similar moves. Meanwhile, Republican-led states like Florida and Missouri are watching Texas and drawing up their own plans to press their advantage. With the U.S. House majority hanging by just 7 seats, these state-level battles could easily determine who controls Congress in 2026. Legal challenges are, of course, inevitable, but some experts are grim about the Democrats' chances. Andrew Cherkowski, this will be an insurmountable legal challenge for the Democrats, and ultimately the redistricting will go through. As the Texas Senate prepares for its final vote and Governor Abbott waits with his pen, the fight will soon move from the legislature to the courts. But the Texas redistricting battle of 2025 is a stark and chilling reminder that democracy isn't a destination. It's a constant, fragile struggle. It lays bare the central conflict of our time, the tension between raw partisan ambition and the promise of a truly inclusive representative government. During the final debate, one lawmaker posed a question that hangs over this entire affair, a question about power, history, and the simple defense of because we can. Jose Garcia, when we continue to ask, why would you vote yes? And you say, because we can, I ask you to stop, pause, and think of all of the history, horrendous and otherwise, that we've been through because of the masquerade that might makes right. The lines on the map may soon be set in stone, but for millions of Texans and for the nation watching, the fight for fair representation, the fight for the very soul of democracy, is far from over.